He never looked at his assistant. Not really. Not until another man made her laugh. And maybe that is the cruelest kind of heartbreak, loving someone in silence while they pass your desk every morning like your heart is not breaking in plain sight. In Boston's Seaport district, behind glass walls and locked elevators, Mara Ellis built her days around perfect schedules, cold coffee, and the dangerous man who never said her name. Roman Voss owned the building, the boardroom, and half the shadows beneath the city. But for almost a year, he never let himself see her. Then, one ordinary morning, a security tech handed Mara coffee, made her laugh, and Roman's control cracked. This is not just a story about jealousy. It is about power danger and the moment an invisible woman becomes impossible to ignore. Like this video comment where you're watching from and stay until the end. The laugh was still in the hallway when Mara followed Roman Voss into his office, and somehow that made it worse. It should have faded by then. It should have disappeared into the hum of printers, the low murmur of calls, the soft click of expensive shoes crossing polished stone. But Mara could still hear it in her own head, bright and unguarded, a sound she had not meant to give away on a floor where everyone learned to keep their feelings quiet. Roman did not speak as she entered. That was his talent. Silence, when held by most people, felt empty. Silence, when held by Roman Voss, felt loaded. It filled a room the way smoke filled a closed hallway, slow and certain, giving everyone inside it no choice but to breathe him in. His office sat at the corner of the 42nd floor, high above Boston Harbor. From Mara's desk outside, it had always looked like a dark glass box, where powerful decisions were made by men who never lowered their voices. From inside, it felt less like an office than a private command center wrapped in luxury. Dark walnut desk, black leather chairs, shelves lined with books that looked used, not staged, a locked cabinet beside the inner wall, a bar cart that held crystal glasses and one untouched bottle of scotch. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened the city below in cold morning light. The harbor spread silver and restless beyond the buildings. Ferries cut white lines through the water. Farther out, cranes stood over the port like steel birds waiting to feed. There were no family photographs, no framed degrees, no cheerful awards. Nothing soft enough to suggest Roman Voss had ever needed to be remembered by anyone. Mara stopped near the chair across from his desk, still holding her notebook against her chest. She did not know why she had brought it. There was nothing about this moment that belonged in meeting notes. No action items. No revised schedule. No polite summary to send legal before noon. Roman closed the door behind her. The click of the latch was quiet, but Mara felt it in her spine. He moved past her without brushing against her, though the room seemed to shift around his body as he crossed it. He did not sit. Instead, he walked to the window and looked out at the harbor with his phone still in one hand, screen dark, now forgotten. For a few seconds, Mara let herself watch him. She had watched him for months. Secretly, carefully, in stolen pieces. The line of his shoulders beneath a tailored black suit, the way he removed one cufflink when a meeting ran too long, the way men twice his age softened their voices when he entered, the way women in the building looked at him when they thought no one noticed with fear, and want twisted so close together they almost seemed like the same thing. Roman Voss was not handsome in an easy way. Easy belonged to men like Ethan Ward, who smiled with his whole face and brought coffee like kindness cost nothing. Roman was different. Roman was beautiful the way a locked door was beautiful when you knew something dangerous waited behind it. Sharp. Controlled. Built for distance. The kind of man a person noticed before they understood why their body had gone still. Mara hated that she noticed all of it. She hated more that he never seemed to notice her back. Until now. Roman turned from the window. His eyes landed on her with such complete focus that she almost looked away. Almost. "Sit," he said. Mara sat. The chair was too soft. It made her feel unsteady, like the room wanted to swallow her. She set the notebook on her lap and folded both hands over it to keep them from shaking. Roman studied her. Not the quick scan he gave most people before dismissing them. Not the bored glance of a man forced to deal with someone beneath his pay grade. This was slower, stranger. His eyes moved across her face, the collar of her cream blouse, the loose strand of hair near her cheek. The fingers locked too tightly over her notebook. Mara felt seen in a way she had dreamed about and dreaded without knowing it. "How long have you worked on this floor?" he asked. The question was so ordinary that for a moment she did not trust it. 11 months, she said. 11 months and 9 days. Her breath caught, but she recovered quickly. "Yes, Mr. Voss. How many times have you been late?" "Never." "How many sick days?" "1." His gaze sharpened. "You came in that day." Mara looked down at the notebook. "Then none." "How many errors have reached my desk with your name attached?" "None." "Correct." He said it like a verdict. Mara waited, pulse knocking low in her throat. Roman stepped closer to his desk, then leaned one hand against the edge of it. The position should have seemed casual. It did not. Nothing about Roman ever seemed casual. Even at rest, he looked like an answer to a threat no one else had heard yet. "Then explain something to me, Miss Ellis." The formal address irritated her more than it should have. "Yes. Explain why I walked out of my office and found you wasting company time with one of my security men." Mara blinked. Of all the things he could have said, that was not the one she had expected. Wasting company time. "You were laughing. I was at my desk. You were not working. I was speaking to someone who works in this building." Roman's jaw moved once. "He was leaning on your desk. He brought me coffee. That is not his job. It is not a crime either." The words left her before she could soften them. Roman's eyes cooled. Mara knew that look. She had seen department heads fold under less. She had seen men with Harvard voices and silver watches lose entire arguments because Roman looked at them exactly that way and waited for them to remember their place. Mara should have remembered hers, but something in her had split open when he sent Ethan away. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was humiliation. Maybe it was the simple exhaustion of almost a year spent being careful for a man who could suddenly decide her laughter required discipline. Roman straightened. "You think this is funny?" "No," Mara said. That was the problem, apparently. Silence dropped hard between them. The moment the words left her mouth, she wanted to reach out and pull them back. Not because they were untrue, because they were too true, and truth had no manners once it got loose. Roman looked at her for a long time. Then, very quietly, he said, "Do not mistake my patience for permission to be reckless." There it was, the voice people talked about. Not loud, never loud. Men like Roman did not need volume. His control was colder than shouting and more dangerous because of it. Mara felt fear move through her quick and clean, but beneath it, anger stayed. "With respect, Mr. Voss, I am not sure what I did that was reckless." His eyes narrowed. "You encouraged attention." I smiled at someone. "You laughed with him." So, the words surprised them both. Roman's face did not change, but the air did. Mara sat straighter, feeling her heart beat too fast under her blouse. She had imagined conversations with Roman Voss more times than she would ever admit. In those imagined versions, she was calm, clever, maybe a little charming. Sometimes he asked her to stay late, and sometimes he said her name as if it mattered. None of those fantasies had included this: a locked office, an accusation, her own voice trembling with the kind of courage that felt dangerously close to stupidity. Roman came around the desk. Mara's fingers tightened on the notebook. He did not come close enough to touch her, not even close enough to threaten it. He stopped several feet away, hands at his sides, gaze fixed on her face. "You work outside my door," he said. "Every person on this floor sees who stops at your desk, who makes you smile, who lingers." Mara let out a breath that almost became a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "People on this floor see what they want to see." "Yes. Then maybe that is their problem." "No," Roman said. "On this floor, perception becomes leverage." The word settled between them. Leverage. It did not sound like office gossip when he said it. It sounded like something heavier, something that belonged in rooms without windows and conversations that ended before names were written down. Mara looked past him to the harbor. She knew the rumors. Everyone did. Roman Voss had inherited part of his father's shipping business at 27 and turned it into Voss Atlantic Group, a corporate empire clean enough to impress investors and complicated enough to frighten competitors. He owned freight routes, redevelopment contracts, private security firms, and quiet relationships with men who never appeared in press releases. Magazines called him disciplined. Politicians called him strategic. Dock workers called him Mr. Voss and looked away. The city called him other things after dark. Mara had heard pieces. A union dispute that vanished overnight. A councilman who withdrew an accusation and left Massachusetts 6 weeks later. A warehouse fire that no one could prove was connected to anything. The kind of stories people lowered their voices to tell because the walls in buildings like this sometimes had ears. Mara had told herself not to believe all of it. She had also told herself not to care about him. She had failed at both. "You are talking as if Ethan did something wrong," she said. Roman's gaze sharpened at the name. There, a flicker. Small, but she saw it. "He was being kind," Mara said. Roman's voice lowered. "You defend him quickly, because he does not deserve to be punished for bringing me coffee." He was removed from the floor. "That is not punishment." It felt like one. To you or to him. Mara stared at him. The question was too precise, too revealing. She understood suddenly that Roman was not angry only because Ethan had made her laugh. He was angry because Mara cared that Ethan had been sent away. That knowledge should have irritated her. Instead, it sent a dangerous warmth through her chest, and she hated herself for it. She set the notebook on the chair beside her and stood. Roman's eyes dropped briefly to the movement, then returned to her face. "I know how this building works," she said. "Do you?" "Yes. I know people talk when women are noticed by powerful men. I know they talk when women laugh too loudly or stay too late or wear the wrong blouse to the wrong meeting. I know they talk when women are invisible too, but at least then nobody bothers dressing it up as concern." Roman said nothing. Mara took one breath and then another. Her voice softened, not because she was calmer, but because some wounds could only speak quietly. "I have worked outside your office for almost a year. I know who looks through me. I know who gives orders over my head like I am part of the furniture. I know who says my name only when something goes wrong." She met his eyes. "And I know you are one of them." For the first time since she entered the office, Roman looked struck. Not visibly to anyone else, maybe. Not enough for gossip. But Mara had spent 11 months learning the architecture of his restraint from a distance. She knew the difference between stillness and impact. That had landed. Outside the glass wall, the executive floor moved in careful silence. A paralegal crossed with a stack of folders. Someone near reception answered a phone. Jude Callahan stood near the far corridor, speaking into an earpiece, his face turned slightly away, though Mara had no doubt he knew exactly what was happening behind Roman's closed door. The building continued. Inside, something had stopped pretending. Roman looked at her. "I was never unaware of you," he said. Mara's pulse changed. The sentence was not warm. It was not romantic. It was worse. It was a key turning in a lock she had convinced herself did not exist. She swallowed. "What does that mean?" Roman moved away from her instead of closer. He walked back to the window and looked down at the harbor. From behind, he looked untouchable again. Broad shoulders, perfect suit, hands still. A man assembled from discipline and expensive tailoring. But his voice when it came was different, less polished. "I knew your name after your first week." Mara did not move. "I knew you corrected the Brighton file before legal noticed the clause was wrong. I knew you fixed Martin Hale's travel schedule after he blamed you for missing his own flight. I knew you stayed until 10:13 last Tuesday because procurement sent numbers in the wrong format, and you did not want the mistake reaching my morning briefing." Mara's mouth went dry. Roman turned back around. "I knew you kept cough drops in your second drawer for 3 months after that winter cold. I knew you stopped taking the elevator with the finance team because one of them made you uncomfortable. I knew your mother has treatment on Wednesdays because your voice changes every Tuesday afternoon when you call her and try to sound less tired than you are." The office blurred slightly at the edges. Mara gripped the back of the chair. "How do you know about my mother?" Roman held her gaze. "Because I pay attention to what matters on my floor." She should have been angry. She was angry. But anger had to fight its way through something more fragile. All those months she had gone home with the ache of being unseen, tucked behind her ribs. She had replayed every small moment until it became almost embarrassing. A meal appearing when she stayed late. Jude putting medicine on her desk. Roman correcting a department head who tried to blame her. A glance from his office door when she thought no one noticed she had been crying in the restroom after a call from the hospital. She had taken those scraps and built a private, foolish hope out of them, then hated herself for needing so little. Now he stood in front of her and told her those scraps had not been accidents. They had been choices. Quiet choices. Distant choices. Cruel choices maybe, but not careless ones. Why, she asked. Roman did not pretend to misunderstand. "Because men who stand close to me become targets." The sentence entered the room like cold air. Mara looked at him carefully. There it was again. The other world beneath the corporate one. The one everyone felt but no one named when the lights were bright and the investors were smiling. "Is that supposed to explain why you ignored me?" "Yes, it does not." Roman's face tightened. "I know." The admission was so blunt that Mara had no defense ready for it. For a moment they were both silent. Then Roman looked past her toward the door, as if he could see through it to the floor beyond. To the desks and assistants and analysts and men with polished shoes who pretended power was made in meetings instead of fear. "When my attention lands on someone," he said, "people notice. They speculate, they circle, they test. Sometimes they do worse." Mara's fingers loosened slowly from the chair. "You thought pretending I did not exist would protect me. I thought distance would, and did it." His eyes came back to her. No, the single word carried more weight than any speech could have. Mara felt the room tilt, not enough to lose balance, but enough to understand that something under her feet had moved. Roman had not been indifferent. That did not heal the hurt. It complicated it. It made every morning sharper in memory. Every time he had passed her desk without a greeting. Every time she had looked up when his office door opened and hated herself when he walked past. Every time she had wondered if there was something too plain, too small, too ordinary about her to hold the attention of a man like him. She looked at him now, angry enough to speak the truth, and wounded enough not to dress it nicely. "I spent months thinking there was something wrong with me." Roman went very still. Mara's voice stayed quiet. "Do you understand that I sat 10 feet from your office? I worked late. I fixed problems that were not mine. I learned how you liked your reports printed and which calls you would take even during meetings. I knew when you were angry before anyone else did because your office got too quiet. And every morning you walked by like I was nothing." His eyes darkened. "Mara." The sound of her first name almost broke her composure. Almost. She lifted her chin. "No, you do not get to say my name like that now." Roman closed his mouth. The silence after that was raw. Mara looked away first because if she did not she might cry, and crying in Roman Voss's office felt like giving the building one more piece of her it had not earned. Her gaze landed on the city beyond the glass. Boston looked clean from this height. Elegant, historic, almost gentle under the pale morning sky. But Mara knew what cities did to people without money or armor. They made them small. They made them grateful for bad options. They taught them to smile at men who forgot their names because rent was due and hospital bills did not care about pride. She had not come to Voss Atlantic looking for romance. She had come for health insurance, for overtime, for a job with enough stability to keep her mother's prescriptions filled without deciding which utility bill could wait another week. The first time she saw Roman, she had been carrying 3 binders down the executive corridor with a blister forming on her heel and a headache behind her eyes. The private elevator opened, and he stepped out with Jude and 2 men in dark coats. Mara remembered the exact second the floor changed. It was not dramatic. No music, no slow motion, no warning from the universe. Just a sudden awareness that everyone else had adjusted themselves around one man's presence. Roman had crossed the corridor without looking at her. One of the binders had slipped in her arms. Before it fell, Jude had taken 2 from the stack and placed them on the nearest console. Roman never broke stride. Jude only said, "Mr. Voss dislikes disorder on this floor." Mara should have found that cold. Instead, she went home that night and thought about the way Roman had noticed the falling binders without turning his head. That was how it began. Not with affection. With attention disguised as control. After that, she had collected moments she knew better than to collect. The meal left at her desk during a snowstorm. The head of acquisitions going pale after Roman said if Miss Ellis says the document was sent, then it was sent. The afternoon Roman paused near her station when she dropped a pen, then continued walking only after she picked it up with steady fingers. Tiny things. Barely things. But loneliness could turn almost anything into evidence. Now, standing in his office while he admitted he had seen more than she ever guessed, Mara felt foolish and furious and strangely relieved. Roman took 1 step toward her. She noticed. He noticed that she noticed. He stopped. That restraint did something terrible to her heart. "I did not mean to hurt you," he said. Mara laughed once softly and without warmth. That is what everyone says when they hurt someone very carefully. Roman accepted it. Again, no defense. No excuse. It would have been easier if he had argued. "I told myself," he said, "that you were safer outside my attention. And now..." His eyes moved over her face, not lingering on her mouth this time, not allowing himself that escape. "Now I know I failed." Mara did not know what to do with that. The office suddenly felt too small, though it was larger than her entire apartment. The air smelled faintly of cedar coffee and Roman's cologne. Clean, expensive, and too intimate now that she had nowhere to put her anger. A knock sounded at the door, once. Jude entered before Roman answered, though only by a fraction, as if he already knew how far he could push. His gaze took in Mara, standing Roman too close, and not close enough the notebook abandoned on the chair. Nothing changed in his expression. 10 o'clock call is holding, Jude said. Roman did not look away from Mara. "Move it. It has already been moved." "Move it again." Jude paused. Not because he objected, because he understood the message beneath the words, and was deciding how much of it needed repeating later. Understood. He left. The door closed. Mara exhaled slowly. "I should get back to work." Roman's eyes held hers. "You can." The answer surprised her. He was not dismissing her. He was not ordering her. He was offering the door, and somehow that unsettled her more than if he had blocked it. Mara reached for her notebook. Her fingers brushed the cover but did not lift it. She did not want the notebook. She wanted the part of herself that had entered this room believing the worst thing that could happen was embarrassment. That woman felt far away now. Roman spoke again, quieter. "I moved Ward downstairs because I did not like seeing him make you smile." Mara froze. There it was. The truth beneath everything. Not office conduct. Not perception. Not leverage. Jealousy. Bear controlled poorly, but finally named. She turned back to him. "That is not professional." "Number. You know that." "Yes." "Then why say it?" Roman's mouth shifted almost to smile, but there was no lightness in it. "Because you asked me not to pretend." Mara's heart gave one hard beat. The room held still. Outside, the city continued moving. Ferries crossed the harbor. Elevators rose. Phones rang. Men in expensive suits prepared for meetings where money would move and lives would change without anyone calling it violence. Inside Roman's office, Mara stood with her notebook in one hand and the last of her old certainty slipping through her fingers. She had wanted to be seen. Now she was. And Roman Voss looked at her like seeing was no longer enough. Mara did not know which part of his confession frightened her more. That Roman Voss had been jealous, or that he had chosen to admit it. The office seemed to hold its breath around them. Behind the glass, Boston moved in pale morning light, all water and steel and clean angles. In here everything felt closer. The dark desk, the locked door, The man standing a few feet away with his control still in place, but not as perfectly as before. Mara gripped her notebook against her side. "You had no right," she said. Roman did not look away. "I know." The answer should have satisfied her. It did not. If anything, it made the ground beneath her feel less steady. She wanted him to deny it, to say something cold and arrogant enough for her to hate him cleanly. Instead, he stood there admitting the truth like it cost him something, and still not enough. Mara shook her head once. "No, I do not think you do. You do not get to send a man away because he made me laugh. You do not get to decide which parts of me are safe for other people to see." Roman's face hardened, but his voice stayed low. "I did not like it." "That is not an explanation. It is the honest one." Mara let out a sharp breath and looked towards the door. Her desk was waiting outside. Her inbox was probably filling. The 10 o'clock call had been moved twice. Somewhere on that floor, people were building stories out of silence and a closed door. She should leave. She knew that. She should open the door, return to her station, and let this impossible conversation become something she could survive by pretending it had not happened. She had become good at that. Pretending was a skill in buildings like this. You pretended not to hear insults dressed as jokes. You pretended not to notice when men forgot your name after you saved their meeting. You pretended you did not look up every time Roman Voss crossed the hallway. But he had said he noticed. He had said he knew her name after her first week. He had said he moved Ethan because he did not like seeing him make her smile. And every part of Mara that had been careful for almost a year was suddenly standing too close to the part that wanted to be reckless. Roman took one step toward her. This time he did not stop halfway. Mara's spine touched the back of the chair. Not trapped, not really. There was space beside her. There was a door behind him. There were 100 reasons to walk out. She stayed. Roman noticed that too. His gaze moved across her face with a restraint that looked almost painful. "Tell me to leave it alone," he said. Mara's fingers tightened around the notebook. "Would you?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. That was the problem with him. When Roman lied, she suspected the whole city believed him. When he told the truth, it landed heavier than it should have. Mara swallowed. "You are my boss." "Yes, you are not an easy man to say no to." Something in his eyes changed. Not anger, not insult, recognition. "Then say it now," he said. "Say no, and I will open that door myself." The room went silent. Mara heard the faint hum of the vents, the distant murmur of a voice beyond the glass. Her own pulse too quick and humiliatingly loud inside her ears. She should say it. No. One word, clean, sensible, safe. Instead, she whispered, "That is not what I want to say." Roman went very still. The admission slipped out so softly it almost did not belong to her. But once it entered the air, it changed everything. It turned the office from a place of accusation into a place of confession. It turned her anger into something warmer and more dangerous. It made Roman's gaze darken in a way that sent heat through her chest before she could defend against it. "What do you want to say?" he asked. Mara hated the tremor in her breath. "I want to know why you cared enough to be jealous, but not enough to say good morning." A faint line appeared between his brows. "That is not a small question." "No," she said, "it is the question." Roman looked down for 1 second, as if the answer were somewhere on the floor between them. Then he lifted his eyes back to hers. "Because saying good morning to you would have become waiting for you to answer." Mara's throat tightened. Roman continued, voice controlled but rougher beneath the polish. "Waiting for you to answer would have become noticing if you sounded tired. Noticing would have become asking. Asking would have become knowing more than I already knew. You already knew too much. Yes? Then what difference would it have made?" His eyes held hers. "I would have wanted permission to care." The words went through her so quietly, so completely, that for a moment she could not speak. Roman Voss did not look like a man who asked permission for anything. He looked like a man born with keys to locked rooms with men waiting outside elevators with the kind of power that made other people step aside before understanding they had moved. But here in this office, with the city beneath him and Mara in front of him, he looked almost angry at himself for having said something too human. Mara set the notebook down on the chair. Her hands felt empty without it. "I would have given it," she said. Roman's face changed. Not much. Enough. He looked at her as if the sentence had cut through him in a place no one had been allowed to reach. Mara. This time when he said her name, she did not stop him. It sounded different now. Not like a correction. Not like a file label. Like he had been keeping it behind his teeth for months and had finally let it loose. He came closer. Mara did not move. The space between them narrowed until she could smell his cologne beneath the cedar of the office. Something clean, dark, expensive, and warm from his skin. She had been near him before, but always in passing. In elevators, at doorways. When he stood beside her desk asking for a file without looking directly at her. This was different. There was nowhere for her senses to go that was not him. Roman lifted his hand. He stopped before touching her. The restraint made her chest ache. There were men who took because they could. Mara had known enough of them in quiet, ordinary ways. Men who stood too close on trains. Men who called kindness flirting when it suited them. Men who mistook a woman's patience for invitation. Roman was dangerous, yes. But in that moment, danger looked like a man holding himself still because her choice mattered. His voice dropped. "You should step back." Mara looked up at him. "You keep telling me what I should do. I am trying to remember what I should do." "And what is that?" "Let you leave." Mara's mouth went dry. "Is that what you want?" "No." The word was almost a breath. Mara's heart answered before her mind could. His fingers rose the last inch and brushed a loose strand of hair away from her cheek. Barely a touch. The backs of his knuckles skimmed her skin so lightly she could have pretended it did not happen if her whole body had not reacted. Her eyes closed for one helpless second. She hated that. Hated the softness it revealed. Hated that after all the anger, after all the months of feeling unseen, one gentle touch from him could reach straight past her defenses. When she opened her eyes, Roman was watching her like the moment had wounded him too. "You felt invisible," he said quietly. Mara's breath shook. "Yes, you were not. That does not erase how it felt. I know." "Do you?" His hand lowered, but he stayed close. "No," he said. "Not the way you do." That answer undid something small and guarded inside her, because he could have claimed understanding. He could have given her another polished sentence, another controlled explanation. Instead, he admitted the limit of what he knew. Mara stared at him for a long moment. Then she asked, "What did you see?" Roman's eyes searched her face. "When?" "All those months." His jaw tightened, not with anger now, but with the effort of bringing something buried into the open. "I saw a woman who arrived before anyone needed her and left after everyone forgot she had stayed. I saw you fix problems and let other people take the relief. I saw you smile at people who spoke over you because it was easier than making them uncomfortable." Mara looked away, but Roman kept speaking. "I saw you press your phone to your chest after calls from the hospital. I saw you rewrite reports with one hand and hold your head with the other when you had a migraine. I saw you take the stairs after a man from finance followed you into the elevator twice." Mara's eyes snapped back to his. "You knew about that?" "Yes." "And you did nothing." Roman's gaze hardened. "He no longer works here." The cold simplicity of it made the room feel different. Mara stared at him. "What did you do?" "I made sure he understood he had better opportunities elsewhere." "That sounds like a threat." It was a career conversation. "Roman." His name left her mouth before she could stop it. He went still at the sound. For 1 second, the office seemed to sharpen around them. Mara felt the weight of that first name, how much distance it crossed, how many rules it broke. She had said it in fear during lunch in some imagined future. She had whispered it silently in her apartment more nights than she wanted to remember. But she had never said it to his face until now. Roman's eyes darkened. "Say it again," he said. Mara's breath caught. She should not. She knew she should not. Roman. His control thinned so visibly this time that even someone who had not studied him for months would have seen it. He moved, then not fast, not rough, but with the decision of a man who had reached the end of every lie he had used to hold himself back. His hand came to the side of her face. Warm palm. Steady fingers. Thumb near her cheekbone. Mara, he said, and her name sounded like a warning he could not obey. Then he kissed her. There was no polite beginning. No careful brush that could be mistaken for anything else. His mouth covered hers with a hunger that had been disciplined too long. It was not careless, it was too focused for that. Too controlled, even in the breaking. But it was raw. The kind of kiss that admitted everything words had not survived. Mara froze, only for a heartbeat. The shock of him filled her. The warmth of his mouth, the strength of his hand at her face, the faint scrape of his jaw, the impossible fact that Roman Voss, who had walked past her for almost a year as if she were air, was kissing her like breathing depended on it. Then the ache in her answered. Her fingers rose to his jacket and gripped the front of it hard enough to wrinkle the expensive fabric. Roman made a low sound against her mouth, almost restrained, almost ruined, and the sound went through her like fire. He stepped closer. Mara's back met the edge of the desk. His other hand braced beside her, not boxing her in, not exactly, but holding himself above some line he still refused to cross without her. She understood that in the way his body stayed careful, even while his mouth did not. It made her want to pull him closer and push him away at the same time. She kissed him back, not gently. There was too much hurt in her for gentle, too much wanting, too many mornings of sitting 10 feet from him with a secret heart and a straight spine. Her hand slid up his lapel to his shoulder. He felt solid beneath the suit. Real. Not the myth the building made of him, not the rumor, not the name that made people lower their voices. A man, a dangerous man, a man whose restraint had finally become honesty. Roman's hand moved from her cheek to the back of her neck, fingers threading into her hair with a controlled pressure that made her knees weaken. He tilted her head and deepened the kiss, and for a few seconds, the office, the floor, the company, the whole watching city fell away. There was only the dark taste of coffee he had not finished, the heat of him, the sound of her own breath catching when he broke away. They stayed close, too close for pretending. Roman's forehead almost touched hers, but not quite. His eyes were open. Hers were too. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence after the kiss was different from every silence before it. It was not a weapon. It was evidence. Mara's lips tingled. Her fingers were still twisted in his jacket. She made herself let go, one finger at a time. That was a mistake, she whispered. Roman's gaze moved over her face, stopping for one dangerous second on her mouth. Number. You cannot know that. I can. How? His answer came without delay. Because I have wanted to do it for longer than I should have. The confession struck harder than the kiss. Mara pushed away from the desk, needing space, needing air, needing any version of herself that could think clearly. Roman let her go at once. He stepped back, though not far enough to turn this into something harmless. Mara crossed to the window and faced the city because looking at him made everything inside her louder. You ignored me for almost a year, she said. Yes. You let me think I was nothing to you. His voice lowered. Yes. She turned back. Stop agreeing like that makes it easier. It is not meant to make anything easier. Then what is it meant to do? Tell the truth. Mara's laugh broke out softly, humorless and unsteady. You picked a terrible time to start. Roman accepted that too. The man was impossible. Infuriating. Too calm in the places where she wanted him defensive. Too honest in the places where she wanted to dismiss him. She folded her arms over herself. You understand what happens if anyone finds out. Roman's eyes cooled not toward her, but toward the thought of the floor outside. Yes, I become the assistant who slept her way into the office. No, you do not get to decide what people say. No, he said. But I can decide what they regret saying. The answer should not have warmed her. It did, and that made her angrier. Do you hear yourself? Clearly. That is not normal. His mouth almost curved. No. Mara shook her head, fighting the dangerous urge to smile. She did not want to smile. Not now. Smiling felt like surrender, and she had surrendered enough without knowing it. Roman saw it anyway. The almost smile. His gaze softened by a fraction. You do that, he said. What? Try not to smile when you think I am being impossible. I do not think. I know. This time the corner of his mouth truly moved. Not a full smile. Barely one. But Mara saw it, and it hit her with unfair force. Roman Voss looked younger when he almost smiled. Not less dangerous exactly. Just less alone. A knock sounded at the door. Mara flinched back into reality. Roman turned his head, irritation crossing his face like a shadow. Jude opened the door. He did not enter fully. One hand rested on the edged tablet tucked under his arm. His gaze moved from Mara near the window to Roman standing too close to the center of the room with his tie slightly disturbed and his expression no longer perfectly arranged. Jude missed nothing. He also said nothing about what he had not missed. The board is waiting, he said. Roman looked at the clock. I said move it. You did. They moved. Now they are waiting again. Mara pressed her lips together. Under different circumstances, she might have laughed. Jude Callahan was the only person in the building who spoke to Roman as if the man were capable of being inconvenienced by time like everyone else. Roman's gaze stayed on Jude. 5 minutes. Jude looked at Mara for the first time. Not judging, not curious, just acknowledging that she existed in the room and that the room had changed. Miss Ellis. She managed a nod. Mr. Callahan. Jude stepped back and closed the door. The click this time sounded less like an ending and more like a warning. Mara looked at Roman. You have a meeting. Yes. You should go. I should. Neither of them moved. Mara hated how much that mattered. Roman reached up and adjusted his tie, but the knot was still slightly loosened. The small imperfection held her attention more than it should have. She had seen him perfect so many times that proof of disorder felt intimate. He caught her looking. Careful, he said quietly. Mara lifted her eyes. Careful. If you look at me like that, I will miss the meeting. Heat climbed her throat. She hated that he could say something so controlled and make it sound indecent. You are very sure of yourself. No, Roman said, not with you. The honesty stole the sharp response from her mouth. He turned and crossed to his desk. From the top drawer, he removed a black card. No logo, no title. Only a number embossed in silver. He held it out. Mara looked at it, but did not take it. What is that? My direct number. I already have your office extension. This is not my office extension. Her eyes lifted to his. The black card sat between them like a secret made physical. Why are you giving me this? Because after you leave this office, you may decide you want distance. You may decide you want to forget this happened. You may decide you are angry enough to never use it. His gaze held hers. But you will not wonder where I stand. Mara stared at him. It was not a love confession. It was too stark for that. No poetry. No promise of forever. No soft phrases meant to wrap around the frightening parts. But somehow that made it more powerful. Roman did not offer her fantasy. He offered certainty. A dangerous kind, maybe, but certainty all the same. She took the card. It was heavier than she expected. The edges were smooth beneath her thumb. What if I do not know where I stand? She asked. Roman's eyes moved across her face. Then start with lunch. Mara blinked. Lunch. At 1. In here. Yes. She stared at him, caught between disbelief and something dangerously close to laughter. You kiss me, against your desk, confess you have been watching me for months. Tell me, men near you do not stay clean, and now you are asking me to lunch. Yes, that is absurd. I know. And you are still asking. I am. Why? This time his answer came softer, because you deserve one ordinary thing before everything becomes complicated. Mara went still. Everything becomes complicated. The words settled beneath her skin, though she did not yet understand how heavy they would become. In that moment, she only knew that Roman's face had changed when he said them. Not with fear. Not exactly. With knowledge. Like he could hear machinery moving far below the polished floor parts of his world shifting now that he had allowed himself to want something in the open. Mara looked down at the card in her hand, then back at him. I might not come. Roman nodded once. That is your choice. The answer mattered. She wanted it not to, but it did. Mara crossed to the chair and picked up her notebook. Her hands were steadier now, though she did not feel steady inside. She walked toward the door. With her hand on the handle, she paused. She did not turn around. Did you really know the sound of my steps? Roman's voice came from behind her, quiet and close enough to make her feel he had moved without sound. Yes. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. And you never once looked up. I looked up after you passed. The ache that went through her was sharp enough to feel like anger. She opened the door before it could show. The executive floor looked exactly the same. That was the cruel thing. Everything outside Roman's office was still polished stone and glass, soft voices and ringing phones, people carrying folders with serious faces. Nothing about the floor admitted that Mara's life had just tilted. She walked back to her desk with Roman's card hidden beneath her notebook. No one looked directly at her. Everyone noticed. That was how the floor worked. Curiosity dressed itself as professionalism. Gossip waited behind lowered eyes. A senior analyst stopped talking when she passed. The legal director glanced once at her mouth and then back at his tablet too quickly. Another assistant near the far wall pretended to rearrange pens while watching Mara's hands. Mara sat at her desk. Her chair felt different. Or maybe she did. She placed her notebook down, opened her calendar, and stared at the screen without seeing a single appointment. Her lips still felt warm. Her skin remembered his hand. Her mind replayed his voice. I looked up after you passed. She slid open the top drawer and placed the black card beneath a stack of sticky notes, then closed it gently, as if noise might expose her. At 10:47, her internal chat blinked. Ethan Ward. Mara stared at his name for several seconds before opening the message. You alive up there? She almost smiled. Almost. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could type yes. She could type busy. She could type do not message me because apparently kindness had become dangerous on the 42nd floor. Instead, she wrote, complicated morning. The reply came fast. Figured, you okay? Mara looked toward Roman's office. Through the glass, she could see him standing near his desk while Jude spoke beside him. Roman had his suit jacket back on. His tie was corrected. His face was unreadable again. The mask had returned so cleanly that anyone else might think nothing had touched him. Then his eyes lifted, straight to her, across the office, across the glass, across 11 months of pretending. Mara's breath caught. Roman did not look away. Not this time. Her chat blinked again. Mara looked down. Ethan had written, you do not have to answer, just wanted to check. That was decent. Simple. The kind of kindness that asked for nothing. Mara typed, I am fine. She paused, then added, thank you. Ethan sent back, anytime, Mara. She closed the chat. The use of her first name should not have felt complicated. It had always been easy with Ethan. That was part of his charm. He said her name like it belonged in normal light over coffee in hallways where nobody watched too closely. Roman said her name like it had weight. Like it had cost him something to say it. Mara pressed her fingers to the edge of her desk and made herself breathe. Work returned in pieces. A call from Boston Legal. A revised investor memo. A request from procurement. 3 calendar conflicts. 1 missing contract. The familiar rhythm of tasks began to wrap around her, and for a while she let it. Work had saved her before. Work did not ask impossible questions. Work did not touch her face like a warning and kiss her like a confession. At 11:26, Roman's board meeting ended. Men in suits came out of the conference room with tight expressions. One older board member looked back toward Roman's office twice as if trying to understand why the meeting had felt shorter and sharper than usual. Jude exited, last tablet in hand, expression calm as ever. Roman remained inside. Mara felt him before she saw him. The office door opened. He stepped into the corridor. Every conversation on the floor softened by half a degree. Mara kept her eyes on the document in front of her. Roman stopped beside her desk. Not long. Long enough. "Miss Ellis," he said. Her pulse betrayed her. She looked up. "Yes, Mr. Voss." The formal names returned, but now they carried a secret under them. "Send the revised harbor contracts to my private inbox." "I already did." His eyes moved over her face. A fraction of warmth entered them, hidden so well that only someone foolish enough to study him would see it. "Of course you did." He turned to leave, then paused. His gaze dropped briefly to her drawer. Mara knew he could eat them des Sun knew he could not see the card inside it. Somehow it still felt like he knew exactly where she had put it. 1 o'clock, he said. Mara kept her voice steady. "I remember." Roman looked at her for another beat, then walked back into his office. The door remained open. That changed the air more than a closed door would have. All morning, Mara worked with the awareness of him behind her and beside her and beyond the glass. He took calls in a low voice, signed documents, spoke with Jude. Once he switched into Italian, his tone clipped and cold, and Mara felt the other world around him press close for a moment. The world beneath the company. The one that made men like Roman Voss more than rich. Every so often she looked up. Every time she did, he was not always watching, but when he was, he no longer pretended otherwise. At 12:55, Mara stood and smoothed her skirt. She told herself she was only going to lunch. One meal, one conversation, a chance to demand answers with less adrenaline in her blood. But her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the file she had no reason to bring. Jude appeared near her desk at 12:58. "Miss Ellis." Mara looked up. "Mr. Voss is ready for you." Several heads on the floor lifted, then lowered too quickly. Mara felt irritation rise sharp and useful. "I know where his office is." Jude's mouth barely moved. "I have no doubt." "Then why are you here?" His gaze flicked toward Roman's open door. "He told me to get you." Mara looked past him. Roman stood inside the office near the window phone in one hand, watching. Of course he was. Mara lifted her chin, picked up her notebook because old habits died hard, and walked past Jude. As she entered Roman's office for the second time that day, the smell of warm bread and coffee reached her first. Lunch waited on the small round table near the window. Not a tray abandoned by an assistant. Not a thoughtless arrangement. Real food. Pasta in a shallow ceramic bowl. A green salad. Fresh bread wrapped in a white cloth. 2 glasses of water. Coffee beside hers made exactly the way she took it. 1 cream. No sugar. Mara stopped. Roman ended his call with a word she did not understand and set the phone face down on his desk. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mara looked at the table and said, "You remembered how I take my coffee." Roman's expression did not change, but his eyes did. "I told you," he said. "I pay attention." The door closed softly behind her. Mara looked from the coffee to Roman. Her anger was still there. So was the hurt. So was the kiss. And underneath all of it, something older and more dangerous than either of them had managed to name. She walked toward the table, sat down, and placed her notebook beside the glass of water. Roman watched her. Mara met his eyes. "All right," Mara said. "Tell me what else you noticed." Roman did not answer right away. He pulled out the chair across from her, but instead of sitting, he stood behind it, with one hand resting on the back. Morning light cut through the glass and touched the side of his face, sharpening the line of his jaw, catching the faint shadow beneath his eyes. He looked like he had slept 3 hours and conquered a city before breakfast. The table between them felt too small. Bread steamed softly beneath the white cloth. The pasta smelled of garlic and basil. Her coffee waited near her right hand, still hot exactly the way she liked it. That detail bothered her more than it should have. A man could kiss a woman in a moment of weakness. A man could confess too much when jealousy made him careless. But remembering how she took her coffee, after nearly a year of pretending not to see her, was not careless. It was intimate. Roman finally sat. I noticed you hate mushrooms, he said. Mara blinked. Of all the answers she had expected, that was not one. What? You pick them out of every catered lunch and hide them under lettuce. She stared at him. For a second, the whole morning tilted toward absurdity. The locked office, the kiss, the confession. Roman Voss, feared by board members and dock bosses, calmly discussing her dislike of mushrooms. Despite herself, Mara almost smiled. Roman saw it. His eyes warmed by a fraction. You also answer the phone differently when your mother calls, he continued. Softer, like you are trying to make the world sound less heavy than it is. The smile died before it fully formed. Mara looked down at her plate. That is not something you should have noticed. No, Roman said. It is something I should have asked about. She lifted her eyes. The apology was not in his words. It was in the lack of defense. Mara reached for her water because her hands needed something to do. My mother hates hospitals, she said. Roman waited. That was another thing about him. When he wanted silence, he used it like a weapon. When he wanted truth, he made it feel like a room someone could step into. Mara hated that she knew the difference now. She says hospitals smell like fear and bleach, Mara continued. She says if people would just let her sit by the ocean for an hour, she could get better faster than any doctor could make her. Roman's gaze did not leave her face. Is she right? Mara gave a small, tired laugh. No, but I take her to the water when I can. Revere. Sometimes. Usually Castle Island. She likes watching planes come in over the harbor. Roman absorbed that quietly. Mara wondered what he would do with the information. Store it away like everything else. Use it to send a car she had not asked for. Arrange something before she could object. That was the danger of being seen by a man like Roman. Attention did not stay soft in his hands. It became action. It became structure. It became control. She set her glass down. You have to stop doing that. Doing what? Learning pieces of me like you own the right to them. Roman's face remained still, but something behind his eyes shifted. I do not think I own the right, but you take it anyway. The words landed. Mara watched them settle into him. Roman leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the table, fingers still. You are right. Again, no argument. It unsettled her every time. She picked up her fork, mostly to avoid looking at him. The food was good. Too good. The kind of simple meal that had been chosen with thought instead of money. She had spent so many lunches eating protein bars over her keyboard that sitting across from Roman Voss with real food and too many truths felt almost indecent. For a few minutes they ate in a silence that was not comfortable but not empty either. Outside the glass, the harbor shifted under gray light. Boats moved. Cranes hovered over the port. The city pretended it had no idea what kind of men ruled pieces of it from high offices and private rooms. Roman's phone vibrated once on the table. He glanced down. The softness left his face so completely that Mara felt the change before she understood it. It was like watching a door close inside him. What is it? She asked. Roman picked up the phone and read the message again. He stood. Stay here. Mara's hand tightened around her fork. Roman. His eyes lifted to hers. The man across from her was not the man who had noticed mushrooms. He was not the man who had kissed her against his desk. He was something colder now, older, built for threats that did not arrive politely. Mara, he said, stay in this office. What happened? For 1 second, he looked like he might refuse. Then he said, a package came for you. The words entered the room wrong. A package should have been harmless. Office supplies, misdelivered mail, a late document courier. But Roman had gone still in a way that made harmless impossible. For me, she asked. Yes, I never get packages here. I know. Of course he did. He moved toward the door. Mara stood. Roman turned before she had taken 2 steps. I said, stay. Her fear sharpened into anger because anger was easier to carry. And I heard you. You are not coming out there. It has my name on it. His jaw tightened. That is why you are not coming out there. The sentence should have stopped her. It almost did. But Mara had spent too much of the morning being told where to sit, where to stand, what to understand, what not to encourage, what danger meant in his language. Fear was moving through her now, cold and quick, but underneath it was something stubborn. "I am not a child," she said. "No," Roman answered. "You are the target." The word hit hard enough to silence her. Target. Not employee. Not woman. Not assistant. Target. Roman looked at her, and for the first time since the door closed that morning, she saw fear in him. Not panic. Roman Voss would never give panic the satisfaction. But there was something tight beneath the control, something personal and furious. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor. Mara stayed in the office for exactly 3 seconds. Then she followed. The executive floor had changed. No one was pretending anymore, not fully. Assistants sat too still. A junior analyst held a phone halfway to his ear without speaking. The legal director stood near reception with a folder pressed to his chest, eyes fixed on the far conference room. Jude Callahan was already there. He stood outside the private glass conference room with 2 men Mara did not recognize. Both wore dark suits, but they did not look corporate. They stood with loose shoulders and alert eyes like men who had learned to become quiet before violence. On the table inside the conference room sat a small brown package, plain, taped carefully. Mara's name written across the top in black ink. Mara Ellis. The sight of her own name made her stomach tighten. Roman crossed the floor without looking back. People moved out of his path before he reached them. Jude saw him coming and opened the conference room door. Mara stopped in the hallway. She told herself she stopped because Roman had ordered it. The truth was that her legs had become uncertain. Through the glass, she watched Jude put on black gloves. Roman stood beside him, face carved into stillness. One of the unfamiliar men closed the blinds on the corridor side, but not before Mara saw Jude cut through the tape with a small blade. A hush fell over the floor. It was ridiculous, Mara thought distantly. An entire empire pausing for one small box. Then Jude opened it. Roman looked down. Nothing about him moved. That was how Mara knew it was bad. Not from shouting, not from alarm. From the absence of reaction where reaction should have been. Jude removed something flat from the box. A photograph. Roman took it. His hand did not shake. His face changed anyway. It was subtle, but Mara saw it through the narrowing gap before the blinds fell fully closed. His eyes went black with something that made the glass between them feel useless. A moment later, the conference room door opened. Roman stepped out. The floor seemed to pull back from him. He walked straight to Mara. "Inside," he said. His voice was quiet. No one in the hallway moved. Mara did. He guided her back into his office without touching her. That was worse than if he had put a hand on her. The space between them felt measured, controlled, necessary. He closed the door, then locked it. The sound of the lock seemed louder than the city outside. "What was in it?" Mara asked. Roman did not answer immediately. He crossed to his desk, placed the photograph face down, and stood with both hands braced on the polished wood. His head bowed for 1 second. Just one. Then the mask returned. "Tell me where you were last night after work." Mara stared at him. "What?" "After you left the building." "I went home." "What road?" "The usual one." "Mara." She flinched at the sharpness in his voice. Not because it was loud. Because it was afraid beneath the control. She forced herself to think. "I took the Silver Line to South Station. Then the Blue Line. I got off at Maverick and walked home." "Did you stop anywhere?" "No." "Did anyone speak to you?" "No." "Did anyone follow you?" "I did not see anyone." "That is not what I asked." The room tilted slightly. Mara wrapped one arm around herself. "I do not know." Roman's jaw tightened. He picked up the photograph and held it out. Mara did not want to take it. She did anyway. The world narrowed to glossy paper. It was her, outside her apartment building in East Boston. Blue coat buttoned to her throat. Work bag over one shoulder. Hair lifting slightly in the wind. Her head turned toward the street as if she had sensed something, but not enough to understand it. The photo had been taken from across the road. close enough to see her face, far enough to prove whoever took it had waited. Mara turned it over with cold fingers. On the back, written in black marker, were 4 words. Pretty little weakness. For a second, she could not breathe properly. The office became too bright, too clean, too high above the city. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. The photograph trembled once in her hand before she forced herself still. That was yesterday, she said. Yes, I never saw anyone. They did not want you to. She placed the photograph on his desk because holding it made the unseen person behind the camera feel closer. What does this mean? Roman's gaze stayed on the photo. It means someone is testing distance. Distance from what? From me. The answer should have confused her. It did not. A part of her understood before the rest of her accepted it. Mara looked at him. This is because of you. Roman lifted his eyes. Yes, the honesty cut. This happened because you brought me into your office. Number. Roman. This happened because somebody saw that I cared. There was no softness in the confession. No romance. Just a fact laid bare between them. Mara laughed once under her breath, a thin sound with no humor. That is not supposed to make me feel better. It was not meant to. The office felt suddenly exposed despite the locked door. Glass walls, high windows, a city full of strangers. Mara looked toward the harbor and imagined a lens somewhere in the dark. A man in a parked car, a phone raised from across the street. Someone waiting while she unlocked her building door, while she carried groceries, while she called her mother and pretended she was not tired. Her stomach rolled. Who did this? Roman did not answer quickly. That was answer enough. Roman. His eyes came back to hers. The Kessler crew is the most likely source. She had heard the name before. Not in newspapers, not in public. In pieces. From whispered conversations cut short when she entered. From a shipping manager who once came up from the port with bruised knuckles and a face too pale for the weather. From 2 security men speaking near the service elevator about a Kessler runner who had gotten bold on Summer Street. Boston stories. Old blood in new suits. Mara stared at the photograph on the desk. What do they want from you? Access. Roots. Influence on the harbor contracts. A piece of what is not theirs. And I am what a message. Roman's eyes hardened. To them, yes. She looked up. And to you. The question came out quieter than she meant it to. Roman stepped closer. Not enough to crowd her. Enough to make the answer impossible to mistake. To me, you are not leverage. But I can be used like it. His silence told the truth. Mara turned away from him and walked to the window. Boston spread beneath her ordinary and impossible. Cars moved along wet streets. People carried coffee. Boats cut through the harbor. Somewhere in East Boston, her apartment sat exactly as she had left it that morning. Mug in the sink. Laundry folded on the chair. Her mother's prescription receipt on the counter because she had been too tired to throw it away. Yesterday that life had felt small. Now it felt breakable. I had a life before this morning, she said. Roman's voice came from behind her. I know. I could go home and not wonder if someone was waiting outside. A pause. Then he said, no, Mara, you could not. She closed her eyes. You just did not know they were there. That was the part that frightened her most. Not the photograph. Not the note. The certainty in his voice. Roman was not imagining shadows. He was recognizing a pattern. Mara turned back. What happens now? Roman went to his desk and opened the top drawer. From inside he removed a slim black phone still wrapped in clear plastic. He tore it open, powered it on, and placed it in her hand. Mara stared at it. What is this? Yours. I have a phone. Not like this. She looked up slowly. Roman. It is encrypted. Jude's number is already programmed. Mine is first. The phone felt cold in her palm. Too real. Too heavy. A line she had not agreed to cross. I am not one of your people, she said. No. Then stop giving me things that belong to your world. Roman's expression did not soften. You became part of that world the moment someone followed you home. Mara's fingers tightened around the phone. She wanted to throw it back at him. She wanted to keep it. She hated both instincts. The room went quiet again. Then Roman said, "You are not returning to your apartment tonight." The words came too fast, too certain. Mara's head lifted. "That is not your decision." "No." "Then why does it sound like one?" "Because I am trying not to let fear make me impolite." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That is you being polite." "Yes." She walked back to his desk and set the black phone down beside the photograph. "I'm going home after work." "No, you are not." "Roman." His name had changed texture in her mouth since the kiss. It carried anger now, but intimacy too. She could hear it. So could he. He moved closer, stopping on the other side of the desk. "I will not allow the men who watched you yesterday to have another opportunity tonight." "You will not allow." His eyes flashed. "That is what I said." "You hear yourself right." "Perfectly. I am not cargo. I am not one of your harbor contracts. I am not something you move to a safer location because men in dark suits tell you the weather changed." Roman's jaw clenched. "No. You are the woman whose face was mailed to my office with a threat written on the back." The words struck the room and stayed there. Mara looked down. The photograph sat between them. Her own face, her own building, her own ordinary life turned into proof. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. "I need to pack a bag." "I will have someone do it." "No." Roman watched her. "No strangers going through my things," she said. His gaze held hers for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "I will take you." That was not an invitation. It is the compromise. Mara almost laughed. "You are impossible." "Yes." He said it without shame. She looked toward the closed door, then back at the photograph. The fight went out of her all at once, replaced by exhaustion. Not surrender. Not agreement. Just the sudden awareness that the rules of her day had been rewritten without asking her permission. "Fine," she said. "I get my own bag." Roman looked at the black phone. "Take it." Mara did not move. "Mara." She picked it up. He watched until she placed it inside her purse. Only then did he unlock the office door. The rest of the afternoon moved strangely. The executive floor behaved as if nothing had happened, which only made everything feel more wrong. People answered phones, meetings continued, documents were printed, coffee cooled in paper cups. But the air had changed. Security men appeared near the elevators. Jude moved through the floor with a calm that was almost elegant, speaking low into his earpiece. No one asked Mara anything directly. That was the mercy and cruelty of the place. At 3:15, she went to the restroom. A man she did not recognize stepped into the corridor behind her and waited near the wall until she came out. She stopped. He looked straight ahead, as if guarding women on their way to wash their hands was normal office behavior. Mara returned to her desk with her stomach tight. At 4:30, Roman canceled 2 meetings and took a call in Italian behind closed glass. His voice was too low for her to hear, but she watched the shape of it. Short sentences. No wasted breath. At one point, Jude entered the office and placed a folder on Roman's desk. Roman opened it, looked at one page, then closed it so gently that Mara felt cold move across her skin. At 5:10, Roman stepped out. "Get your coat." Mara rose without arguing. She hated that too. The private elevator opened directly into the underground garage. The air below the building smelled of concrete rainwater and engine heat. A black SUV waited near the far wall, headlights on. Jude sat in the front passenger seat. Another man stood near the driver door, scanning the garage. Roman opened the rear door for Mara. She slid inside. He got in beside her. The door closed, sealing them in leather and tinted glass. For several minutes, no one spoke. Boston moved outside in wet streaks of gray and gold. Traffic crawled near the waterfront. Brake lights reflected on rain-dark pavement. People hurried beneath umbrellas, heads down, lives untouched by the quiet war building around one woman's name on a box. Mara looked out the window. "Are they watching us now?" Roman's answer came after a beat. "Not close." "That is not no." "No." She turned toward him. His face was half lit by passing streetlights. In the dim car, he looked less polished and more dangerous. The man beneath the office. The one Boston whispered about. "Does this happen often?" she asked. "Threats. Yes, yes. To women you kiss in your office." His eyes moved to hers. "No." The simplicity of it stole the next question from her. Mara looked away first. They crossed into East Boston as the last light thinned behind the clouds. Her building sat on a narrow street lined with old brick parked cars and tired stoops. It looked smaller than it had that morning, more fragile. The SUV stopped at the curb. Before Mara could open her door, Roman touched her wrist. Not hard. Enough. Wait. She watched through the window as Jude got out first. He spoke into his phone, scanned the block, then nodded once. 2 other men appeared from a parked sedan Mara had not noticed. Her street was not her street anymore. It was a perimeter. Mara pulled her wrist free. "This is absurd." Roman opened his door. "This is careful. I used to walk up those stairs carrying groceries and a broken umbrella. And now you do not." She got out because arguing beside the SUV while 3 armed-looking men watched the sidewalk felt worse than obeying. Her building smelled the same as always. Radiator heat, old cooking oil, damp wool from someone's coat. A television murmured behind the first-floor door. Normal sounds. Normal smells. Mara held on to them as she climbed the stairs because they were proof that some part of her life still existed. Roman followed 1 step behind her, too large for the narrow stairwell, too silent for a man in expensive shoes. At her apartment door, she unlocked both locks with hands that shook only once. Roman noticed. He did not comment. Mara stepped inside first. Her apartment was exactly as she had left it. Small living room. Soft gray couch with a blanket folded over the arm. Books stacked on the coffee table. A chipped mug in the sink. A lamp glowing because she had forgotten to turn it off that morning. Her blue coat from the photograph hung on the hook by the door. She stared at it. Roman closed the door behind them. For a moment, neither moved. Then he became motion. He crossed to the window, checked the latch, looked down at the street, moved to the kitchen, glanced at the back fire escape, then the bedroom door. His gaze catalogued every weakness in the place she had called safe. Mara hated watching it. Not because he was wrong, because he was right. "I need 10 minutes," she said. "Take 5. She shot him a look. "Do not start." Roman's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. Mara went into the bedroom and pulled an overnight bag from the closet. Her hands moved too fast. A sweater, jeans, sleep clothes, toothbrush, charger, medication. Then she paused and looked around the room. What did a woman pack when her life no longer fit inside her own apartment? From the doorway, Roman watched silently. She opened the top drawer and took out a small framed photograph of her and her mother at Castle Island. Wind in their hair. Sunglasses too cheap to flatter either of them. Both laughing. Real laughter. The kind that did not know it would become precious later. She placed it carefully in the bag. Roman's eyes followed the movement. "My mother cannot know about this," Mara said. Roman's voice was quiet. "She may need protection too." Mara turned fast. "No, Mara. No, you do not get to put men outside her clinic without telling me. You do not get to call doctors. You do not get to move pieces around my mother like she is part of your security map." Roman absorbed the force of it. Then, after a moment, he said, "Then we tell her as little as possible and keep the protection invisible." Mara stared at him. "That is still you doing it." "Yes, Roman." His eyes held hers. "If they know about your apartment, they can learn about her." The room went silent. Mara hated him for saying it. She hated more that she had not thought of it first. Her shoulders lowered slightly. "She is tired," Mara said. "She cannot be scared like this. I know. You do not know her. I know she matters to you." That was enough to make her look away. She zipped the bag with more force than necessary. When she moved past him, Roman took the bag from her hand. "I can carry it." "I know." "Then give it back." Number. The absurdity of fighting over luggage while being hunted by an old Boston crime crew almost made her laugh. Almost. Instead, she let him carry it because she was suddenly too tired to prove strength by holding on to something heavy. At the door, she paused and looked back at the apartment. The lamp, the books, the mug, the coat on the hook. A life interrupted mid-sentence. Roman waited beside her. For once, he did not rush. Mara turned off the lamp. Then they left. The ride to Roman's penthouse felt shorter than the ride to her apartment, though the city stretched wider between them. Mara sat with her hands folded in her lap, the black phone inside her purse like a pulse. Roman took one call. Only one. He spoke in low, clipped English. Watch the building. No contact unless necessary. If anyone circles twice, I want the plate, the face, and the direction. Keep the mother out of sight. Mara's head turned sharply. Roman ended the call. You said invisible, he said before she could speak. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she faced the window. The SUV climbed into the Seaport, where glass towers held the last of the evening light. Roman's building rose above the harbor, private and severe, with an entrance set back from the street and cameras tucked into places Mara would never have noticed before today. The garage gate opened before the car reached it. The elevator required Roman's handprint. Of course it did. Mara was too tired to comment. When the private elevator doors opened into his penthouse, she stepped into another world. Warm light spread over dark floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows turned Boston Harbor into a field of black glass and scattered gold. The furniture was expensive, but spare clean lines, deep colors, nothing crowded, nothing accidental. There was a long dining table that looked unused, a wall of books, a kitchen of stone and steel, and so much space that Mara felt her own apartment shrink in memory. Roman set her bag near the hall. Mara stood in the middle of the living room and slowly turned. You live like this, sometimes. What does that mean? It means I sleep here. Living is less consistent. She looked at him. He seemed different in this place. Not softer exactly, but less surrounded by performance. His tie was loosened. His hair was slightly disturbed from the rain. His face carried the weight of the day in ways his office would never have allowed. The penthouse was beautiful. It was also lonely. Mara walked toward the window. Below, the harbor moved in darkness. Far away, a plane blinked over the water. The city lights trembled on the glass, layering over her reflection until she looked like a ghost standing inside someone else's life. Roman came up behind her, but kept distance. The guest room is at the end of the hall, he said. Bathroom is yours. Closet is empty. Jude will bring anything else you need. And where will you be? Here. That is not specific. It is honest. She turned. He was watching her carefully. Not like in the office. Not like at lunch. This was the look of a man afraid she might finally understand the cost of standing near him and decide the price was too high. This is the part where I should be terrified, she said. Roman's expression shifted slightly. Are you? Mara thought about the photograph. Her apartment. The street outside her building. The men by the SUV. The black phone. The way Roman had locked the office door and looked at her as if counting every breath mattered. Then she thought about his hand pausing before it touched her face. His voice saying, say no, and I will open that door myself. His quiet, impossible attention. Not of you, she said. Roman stared at her. The city seemed to dim behind him. When he moved closer, he did so slowly, carefully, giving her space to retreat. Mara did not. His hand rose to her cheek, fingertips warm against skin that still felt cold from fear. He touched her like she was something breakable and dangerous at once. That is a dangerous amount of trust, he said. You keep saying dangerous like I do not already know who you are. His thumb brushed once along her cheekbone. You know pieces. Then give me one more. His eyes held hers. For a moment, she thought he might tell her about the Kesslers, about the harbor, about blood under contracts and what men like him did when enemies crossed a line. Instead, he said, stay. Mara's throat tightened. He continued lower. Not because I ordered it. Not because the photograph scared you. Stay because you choose to. The softness of it cut deeper than command ever could have. Mara looked at the man in front of her, the dangerous name, the polished lie, the exhausted truth. Then she whispered, "Tonight." Roman accepted the limit like it mattered. Tonight. The kiss that followed was nothing like the first. The first had been restraint-breaking. This was restraint-listening. Roman's mouth touched hers slowly, giving her time to change her mind even after she had leaned in. Mara's fingers found the front of his shirt. Not gripping this time, holding, proving he was there. Proving she had chosen the step she was taking. His hand slid into her hair, gentle at first, then firmer when she rose closer. The fear did not disappear. It stayed in the room with them. But for a few seconds it was not the loudest thing. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead near hers without quite touching. "Go unpack," he said. Mara let out a breath that almost became a laugh. "That is not romantic." "No," Roman said. "It is practical. Same thing to you. More often than I would like." She took her bag down the hall. The guest room was larger than her living room, with a wide bed, soft gray sheets, and windows facing the harbor. Mara closed the door, but did not lock it. She unpacked only what she needed. Sleep clothes, toothbrush, her mother's photograph. She placed the frame on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed and looked at it. Lena Ellis smiled back from a summer that felt impossibly far away. Mara whispered, "You would hate this. Then, after a moment, you would probably like him." That thought unsettled her enough to stand. When she returned to the living room, Roman was at the window with his phone to his ear. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled, tie missing. The city painted him in dark reflections. His voice was calm. That made the words worse. "If Kessler wanted my attention, he has it." A pause. No warnings through middlemen. Another pause. "If they touch her, I do not negotiate." Mara stopped just outside the kitchen light. Roman listened, then said, "I remove the problem." He ended the call. For a moment, he did not turn. Mara knew he had heard her anyway. "Was that about me?" she asked. Roman looked back. The man who answered her was the same one who had touched her like glass. "Yes." She stepped into the light. "And you are going to keep answering me like that? Would you rather I lie?" "No." He nodded once, as if that mattered. It did. Outside, Boston glowed against the black harbor. Inside, the penthouse held its quiet around them, too wide, too beautiful, too full of things neither of them could still pretend were separate. Mara walked closer, stopping a few feet away. "Roman." "Yes, I am scared." His face changed immediately, not with surprise, with attention. "I know." She shook her head. "No, not the way I mean." He waited. Mara looked toward the window where her reflection stood beside his, smaller and less certain. "I am scared that someone I never saw decided I matter because you do. I am scared that my mother's name could become part of this. I am scared that I woke up this morning worried about coffee and calendars, and now I have an encrypted phone in my purse and men watching my apartment." Her voice thinned, but she did not let it break. "And I am scared because even after all that, I still do not want to leave." Roman closed the distance between them, slowly. His hands came to her waist, not possessive this time. Anchoring. "That makes two of us," he said. Mara looked up. "You are scared." His mouth tightened. "More than I have been in years." The confession was quiet, bare. It reached her because it did not sound like a performance. She stepped into him before she could think herself out of it. Her forehead rested against his chest. Roman held her at once, arms closing around her with a force that felt almost involuntary, then easing as if he remembered she needed room to breathe. His heartbeat was steady beneath her cheek. The sound calmed something in her that words had not reached. For a while they stood without speaking. Then Roman's phone lit again on the table. He did not move. Mara lifted her head. "You should answer." His eyes stayed on hers. "I should." The phone continued to glow. Finally, he released her and picked it up. He read the message. Something in his face went still. Mara's pulse stirred. Roman looked at her. The softness gone, the danger back in place. "Pack for more than one night," he said. Mara stared at him, and the quiet penthouse no longer felt like shelter. It felt like the edge of his world opening beneath her feet. "Pack for more than one night," Roman said. Mara stood in the center of his penthouse and felt the sentence settle into her body before her mind could arrange itself around it. One night could still be an emergency. One night could be fear reaction, a locked door, a photograph on a desk. More than one night became something else. A decision. A change in the shape of her life. She looked at Roman across the quiet living room. The harbor lights burned behind him in scattered gold, turning his reflection into a darker version of himself against the glass. "How bad is it?" she asked. Roman slid the phone into his pocket. "Bad enough that I am done pretending secrecy protects you." Mara felt her pulse move. "What does that mean?" He walked to the kitchen island, opened a drawer, and took out a thin black folder. He placed it on the stone counter between them. Mara did not move toward it at first. She already knew she would not like what was inside. Roman waited. That was becoming its own kind of intimacy between them. He did not soften the truth, but he did not force her hand toward it either. Finally, Mara stepped forward and opened the folder. The first image was the photograph from the package, the one taken outside her apartment building. Her blue coat, her work bag. Her face turned slightly toward the street. The next was grainier. A still from a traffic camera near her bus stop. Then another. A black sedan parked 2 buildings down from her apartment. Another showed the same sedan near the clinic where her mother received treatment. Mara went cold. Her hand stopped on the page. Roman watched her see it. "Is that today?" she asked. "No." His voice was quiet. "Yesterday morning." The room seemed to drop away beneath her. "My mother was there yesterday morning." "I know." She looked up fast, anger rising through the fear. "You know. I had Jude confirm the clinic schedule after the package arrived." Mara's fingers curled against the folder. "You said you would keep protection invisible." "I did." "That car was already there." "Yes." She closed the folder, then opened it again because not looking did not make it less real. The sedan sat in the photo like a patient animal. Waiting. Watching. Mara's breath came shallow. They were watching her too. Roman did not lie. "They were learning what matters to you." The words hit harder than any threat written in marker. Mara stepped away from the counter and pressed a hand to her stomach. The penthouse was warm, but her skin felt chilled from the inside out. Her mother had gone to treatment with a canvas tote, a sweater too thin for the weather, and a stubborn smile she used whenever Mara worried too loudly. She had probably complained about the waiting room chairs. She had probably asked the nurse about her grandchildren. She had probably looked out the window without ever knowing a car sat close enough to make her part of a game she did not understand. Mara turned on Roman. "You brought this to me." His face tightened. "Yes." The answer was too honest to fight cleanly. "I did not ask to be part of your world." Number. "I did not ask men in parked cars to learn my mother's clinic. No, I did not ask you to notice me." Roman went still. That one found blood. Mara saw it and hated herself for caring. Then Roman said, "I know." His voice was lower now, rougher. "I know exactly what my attention cost you." The anger in Mara did not disappear. It shifted, became heavier, sadder, less useful. Roman came closer but stopped before touching her. "I cannot undo that," he said. "But I can make sure no one mistakes you for an opening again." "How?" "I make you public." Mara stared at him. The city hummed beyond the glass. "You want to tell people about me. I want to tell the right people that touching you is touching me. That sounds like ownership." Roman's eyes did not flinch. "In my world, it sounds like survival." Mara gave a bitter little laugh. "Your world has terrible vocabulary." "Yes." His agreement was so immediate that she almost lost the thread of her anger. He continued. "Hidden things are tested. Quiet things are reached for. If they think I am trying to keep you secret, they will assume you are a weakness I am ashamed to name. And if you name me, then you become a line." Mara looked back at the folder. A line. A woman. A daughter. An assistant. A target. She hated how easily men could turn people into symbols when danger entered the room. "And what if I do not want to be your line?" she asked. Roman held her gaze. "Then I speak without you in the room." Her eyes narrowed. "What?" "I can make the declaration without you present. You do not have to stand in front of men who have no right to look at you. Mara searched his face for manipulation. She found tension, concern. Control, yes, always, but not a trap. You would do that, she asked. Yes, even if it weakens your message. Something sharp entered his eyes. Nothing about protecting your choice weakens me. The words entered her quietly. She looked away first. For all his arrogance, for all his impossible commands, Roman was learning the shape of the line she needed from him. Not perfectly, maybe not gently, but he was learning, and that made leaving the anger untouched much harder. Mara closed the folder. If I go, she said, I go as myself. Roman did not speak. She turned back to him. I am not standing beside you like a silent warning sign. I am not going to let a room full of men decide what I am while I hold your arm and look pretty. His gaze moved over her face. No one in that room will decide what you are. They will try. Yes, then they can hear my voice while they do it. For the first time since he had read the message, something like approval moved through his expression. It was not soft. It was not proud in a public way. It was deeper than that. It was the look of a man who had expected courage and still found himself struck by it. Done, he said. Mara blinked. That easy. Number. Roman stepped closer. That's certain. She held his eyes. For a second, the fear did not vanish, but it stood beside something stronger. At dawn, the penthouse was awake before the city fully was. Mara had slept in broken pieces, waking every time the elevator hummed or a low voice moved through the hallway. When she stepped into the kitchen, Roman was already dressed in a black suit and white shirt, his tie still undone around his neck. He stood at the counter with coffee cooling near his hand and a phone pressed to his ear. I want the room sealed by 10, he said. No press, no board names. No one enters with a phone unless I know the passcode. He listened. No mistakes near her mother. If Lena Ellis sees anyone who looks like protection, you have failed. Mara stopped in the doorway. Roman turned as if he had felt her arrive. His voice changed only by a degree. I will be there in 40 minutes. He ended the call. Mara walked into the kitchen. You remembered her name. Roman looked at her. Yes, she wanted to be angry about that too. Instead, she reached for the coffee he had poured for her. 1 cream, no sugar. Her hands were steady this time. That meeting, she said, where is it? Atlantic House. She knew the name. Everyone in the company did. It was one of Voss Atlantic's older waterfront properties, a limestone building near the harbor that appeared in city development articles whenever Roman wanted the public to remember the clean version of his empire. What is it really, she asked. A place where men who prefer privacy can speak without interruption. That was beautifully vague. His mouth almost moved. It is accurate. Mara took a sip of coffee and looked out at the brightening city. And the Kesslers will hear about this. They will hear before lunch. How? Roman adjusted one cuff. Men like that always know when a door closes. The drive to Atlantic House was silent for the first 10 minutes. Boston looked washed clean after the rain. Morning light slid across brick buildings and glass towers. People crossed streets with coffees, briefcases, headphones, lives that had not been interrupted by threat photographs and encrypted phones. Mara sat in the back of the SUV beside Roman, wearing a black dress she had packed weeks ago for a board luncheon she never attended. It was simple, fitted at the waist, professional enough to belong in a corporate room, and severe enough to survive this one. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders. She wore small gold hoops and the coat Roman had placed over her shoulders before she could argue. Not because it completed the look, because the harbor wind had teeth. Roman had not complimented her. He had looked at her once fully and gone quiet. That had been worse. Now his gaze was on the window, but his hand rested between them on the seat, palm down, fingers relaxed. Not reaching. Available. Mara looked at it for several seconds, then placed her hand over his. Roman did not turn. His fingers moved around hers. That was all. It was enough. Atlantic House stood near the water, old limestone against a morning sky too pale to be kind. The front looked respectable. Historic. A place for lawyers and preservation boards and donor events. The SUV did not stop in front. It turned into a private garage entrance beneath the building. Jude waited near the elevator. He wore a charcoal coat, dark gloves, and the expression of a man who had already accounted for every possible exit. "Miss Ellis," he said. "Mr. Callahan." His eyes flicked to Roman. "The room is set. Names: Rourke, Bell, Sante Marino. 2 from labor. 1 from freight finance. No Kessler presence." Roman's jaw tightened. They would not dare. "No," Jude said. "But they will hear." The elevator opened. Mara stepped inside with Roman beside her and Jude facing the doors. As they rose, she looked at her reflection in the polished metal. She looked calm. That felt dishonest. Roman must have seen something shift in her face because he spoke without turning. "You do not have to say anything." Mara looked at him. "I know. If you want to leave the room, Jude takes you out. I know. If anyone speaks to you in a way you do not like, look at me." Mara almost smiled. "And then what?" Roman's eyes met hers in the reflection. "Then I correct the room." The elevator doors opened. The private floor was quieter than the corporate tower. Dark wood walls, frosted glass, low lighting even in morning. No reception desk. No visible cameras, though Mara knew better now than to assume absence meant anything. Men waited inside a long conference room. They did not stand when Roman entered. They did not need to. Their respect was in the silence. Mara felt every eye move to her. Some of the men looked like executives. Tailored suits, clean hands, careful expressions. Others carried their danger differently. A scar near the jaw. Knuckles that had healed badly. Eyes that measured distance before faces. At the head of the table sat an older man with white hair and a navy suit that looked old school rather than old money. His gaze was sharp but not crude. Patrick Rourke. Mara knew his name from whispers and port stories. Retired supposedly. Respected definitely. A man who had survived enough decades in Boston's underworld to become almost respectable by endurance alone. Roman guided Mara to the head of the table. His hand rested at the small of her back, light but unmistakable. Rourke looked from Roman to Mara. "So it is true," he said. Roman did not sit. "Yes." The word quieted the room further. Another man leaned back, silver ring catching the light. "She is the reason the harbor has been restless since dawn." Roman's voice remained even. "She is the line." Mara felt the room absorb the phrase. A few faces shifted. Curiosity sharpened. Some men looked at her as if she had become more dangerous simply because Roman had said so. Rourke's gaze settled on her. "You know where you are standing, Miss Ellis." Roman's hand became still at her back. Mara felt him listening. She looked at Rourke and kept her voice clear. "I know men were watching me before I walked into this room. At least, here, I know who is looking." Silence followed. Not empty silence, judging silence. Then Rourke's mouth curved slightly. "Fair answer." The silver ring man gave a low breath that might have been amusement. Roman did not move, but Mara felt something in him ease by a fraction. He stepped forward. "Her name is Mara Ellis," Roman said. "She works under my roof. She sleeps under my protection. Her mother is not to be approached. Her apartment is not to be watched. Her name is not to be used by men looking for my attention." No one interrupted. Roman's gaze moved around the table. "The Kesslers sent a photograph to my office. They thought she could be used to test my reach. I am here to make sure every man in this room understands the cost of that mistake." Jude moved along the table and placed folders in front of each man. Photos, routes, vehicle stills, a gas station image of the courier, a grainy frame of the sedan near Lena's clinic. Pages turned. Expressions hardened. The man with the silver ring looked down at the clinic photo and swore softly. They went near the mother. Roman's voice was calm. "Yes." Rourke closed his folder. "That is stupid." "Yes." And loud. "Yes." Rourke studied Roman. "You want blessing or bodies?" Mara's stomach tightened. Roman answered without looking away. "I want clarity." Rourke nodded slowly. "That you have." One by one the other men gave small signs of agreement. A nod, a closed folder, a quiet word. No ceremony, no grand vow. Just recognition passing through the room like a current under dark water. Mara understood then that power in Roman's world did not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it was a room of dangerous men agreeing on where not to step. Rourke looked at her again. "You chose to stand here." Mara lifted her chin. "Yes. Why?" It was not a challenge. Not exactly. Mara felt Roman beside her, silent, now letting her answer. "Because I am tired of men deciding I am safer when I am hidden," she said. Hidden did not keep anyone from following me home. For a moment, no one moved. Then Rourke gave one slow nod. Good. The word should not have mattered. It did. When the meeting ended, the room loosened by degrees. Chairs shifted. Men stood. Folders disappeared into coats. Conversations dropped into lower voices. Rourke approached Mara before leaving. Roman remained beside her, but did not step between them. Rourke stopped at a respectful distance. "Miss Ellis, Mr. Rourke, you kept your footing. I was trying very hard not to show otherwise." This time Rourke's smile reached his eyes. "That is what footing is." He looked at Roman. "You chose trouble with the spine." Roman's answer came immediately. "I know." Mara felt warmth rise under her skin and looked away before either man could see too much of it. Rourke left. The elevator ride down was quiet. Jude stood in front again, but his gaze flicked once to Mara in the reflection. There was no softness in it, but there was something like respect. When the doors opened into the garage, Roman paused beside the SUV. Mara looked at him. "Was that what you wanted?" Mostly. His eyes moved over her face. "I did not expect you to make Patrick Rourke smile." Mara let out a breath, almost a laugh. "Is that bad?" Number. Roman stepped closer, stopping where only she could hear him. "It is difficult." "What is?" "Watching a room full of dangerous men, realize what I already knew." Mara's chest tightened. "And what is that?" His gaze held hers. "That you were never invisible." They were simply not paying attention. For a second, the garage, the guards, the threats, the black vehicles, all of it softened around the sentence. Mara wanted to answer. She did not know how. Roman opened the car door. This time, when she slid into the back seat, she did not sit as far from him. By the time they returned to Voss Atlantic, word had already moved ahead of them. The executive floor looked normal at first. That was how this place lied. Phones rang. Assistants walked quickly. Legal teams gathered near conference rooms. Coffee cups lined desks. The harbor contracts waited in Roman's inbox like business was still the only thing that mattered. But the air had changed. Heads lifted when Mara stepped out of the private elevator beside Roman. Not with gossip this time, with calculation. Mara's old desk outside Roman's office was empty. A new assistant sat there temporarily, eyes lowered to the screen with too much focus. Inside Roman's office, a second workstation had been arranged near the windows. Clean desk, monitor, phone, fresh notebook. Her nameplate already placed beside the keyboard. Mara stopped at the doorway. Roman watched her notice. "You moved my desk." "Yes." That was bold. That was necessary. She looked at him. He added, "And premature if you hate it." Mara blinked. That small correction, that opening for her refusal mattered. She stepped into the office and touched the back of the new chair. From here she could see the harbor. She could also see Roman's desk. More importantly, everyone who entered would see her, visible. No longer outside the door. No longer easy to overlook. No longer safe in the way invisibility pretended to be safe. Mara placed her purse on the desk. "I do not hate it." Roman's eyes held hers. "Good." A knock came. The legal director entered with a folder already speaking. "Mr. Voss, I need your signature on the revised freight liability language, and Miss Ellis, I included the copy you requested." He stopped, as if hearing himself say her name directly surprised him. Mara took the folder. "Thank you, Mr. Danvers." His face adjusted into careful respect. "Of course." When he left, Mara looked down at the folder and then at Roman. That was new. "Yes. It will not all be like that." "No." Some of them will hate me. Yes. Some will think I got here because of you. Roman's gaze sharpened. Then they will learn you remain because of you. The answer settled into her slowly. Outside the glass, the floor continued, pretending not to stare. Mara sat at her new desk and opened the folder. Her hands were steady. Roman crossed to his own desk and picked up a pen, but for 1 second he did not write. He looked at her instead. This time she looked back. No hiding. No pretending. No invisible girl outside his door. Only Mara Ellis seated inside the room where everyone could see her, while Roman Voss stood under the full weight of what he had named. The city beyond the windows kept moving. So did the danger. But something had changed shape. Mara lowered her eyes to the contract, found an error in the 3rd paragraph, and reached for a pen. "Roman," she said. His head lifted immediately. "You missed a clause." For 1 brief second, the corner of his mouth moved. "Of course I did." Mara circled the line and slid the paper across his desk. Their fingers almost touched. This time, neither of them pulled away first. Mara looked down at the space between their hands, close enough for warmth, close enough for memory. Roman saw it too. She knew because his pen stopped moving, because the controlled rhythm of him paused for half a breath. Then the phone on her new desk rang. The sound cut through the office with ordinary cruelty. Mara drew her hand back and answered. Roman Voss's office. Mara Ellis speaking. For the first time, the words did not feel borrowed. They felt like hers. Across the room, Roman looked at her with a quiet intensity that made the legal folder in front of him irrelevant. Mara turned slightly away because if she kept looking at him, she would forget how to sound professional. The rest of the day unfolded in strange layers. Work continued because work always continued. Investor calls came in. Contracts needed revisions. A shipping dispute required Roman's signature. 2 board members requested meetings and received none. Jude passed in and out of the office with files updates and the silent awareness of a man who understood that the room had changed and would not insult anyone by saying so. People came to the door and adjusted. That was the word Mara kept thinking. Adjusted. A senior analyst who used to ask her to grab Roman now said, "Miss Ellis, would Mr. Voss be available?" A woman from finance who had once spoken over Mara 3 times in one meeting now looked straight at her and waited for an answer. The legal director returned twice and thanked her both times. It would have been funny if it had not been so sharp. Visibility had weight. Mara felt it with every glance, every pause, every polite voice that arrived too late. A year of being unseen did not vanish, because powerful men learned to say her name correctly. But it did shift something inside her. The old instinct to shrink still rose sometimes. Then Roman would look up from his desk not to rescue her, not to speak over her, just to make it clear he was listening. That steadied her more than she wanted to admit. Around 4, Mara stepped out to retrieve a sealed file from reception. Roman looked up immediately. "I can have it brought. I can ride an elevator." His eyes narrowed. "Mara." She lifted one brow. "Roman." Jude, standing near the door, made the smallest sound that might have been a cough if Mara believed he ever did anything by accident. Roman leaned back in his chair. "Call when you reach reception. I'm going 3 floors down. Call." Mara held his gaze until the corner of his mouth moved barely. "Please," he added. She took the victory and left. The elevator ride down felt different now. Not safe exactly. Mara doubted she would use that word easily again. But she stood taller inside the mirrored walls. Her reflection looked familiar and unfamiliar at once. Same dark hair, same cream blouse, same tired eyes. But there was something in her posture she had not brought to work the day before. Not confidence, not yet. Maybe defiance. When the elevator opened, Ethan Ward stood near the security station with a tablet under one arm. He saw her and stopped. For a second, neither of them moved. The lobby around them was bright and polished, full of footsteps. Soft conversations, visitors signing in at the front desk. Normal life had a way of becoming almost offensive after danger entered a person's day. Ethan gave her a small smile. "Mara." "Ethan." His eyes moved over her face, searching without pressing. "You okay?" This time the question meant more than the morning. It meant Roman. The closed office, the rumors, the men who had moved through the building after the package arrived. Maybe it meant the way Ethan himself had been sent downstairs for the crime of being kind. Mara adjusted the file in her arms. "I think I am." Ethan nodded slowly. "That is better than no." She almost smiled. "Yes, it is." A quiet passed between them. Then Mara said, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "The coffee." He looked amused for half a second. Then she added, "And for seeing me before it became dangerous to admit it." The amusement faded. Ethan glanced toward the elevators, then back at her. "I always saw you." The words were gentle. No claim inside them, no demand. That made them hurt less and matter more. "I know," Mara said. He shifted the tablet in his hand. "He looks at you differently now." Mara did not ask who. They both knew. "He always did," she said softly. "He was just a coward about it." Ethan blinked, then laughed under his breath. "I would pay real money to hear you say that to his face. I have said worse. I believe that." His smile softened at the edges. There was sadness there, but no bitterness. Mara respected him for that more than she could say. Ethan looked down once, then back up. "Guess I lost a fight I was never really in. I am sorry." He shook his head. "Don't be." I knew what floor I was standing on. The line held no accusation, only truth. Mara wished briefly that life gave gentle people better timing. Ethan touched 2 fingers to the edge of his tablet in a casual salute. "Take care of yourself, Mara. You too." She watched him walk toward the security corridor. One chapter of her life closed without a dramatic break. No shouting, no betrayal. Just a decent man stepping away because he understood the shape of the room. When she returned upstairs, Roman was standing near her desk. Not sitting, standing. His expression was controlled, but his eyes moved over her the second she entered. Mara stopped in the doorway. "I was gone 9 minutes. 8, you counted." "Yes." She walked past him and placed the file on her desk. "That should annoy me more than it does. It annoys you enough. Do not be smug." "I am trying not to be." "You are failing." Roman's mouth curved. Not much. Enough to make her chest warm. Then his gaze shifted toward the elevators beyond the glass. "You saw Ward." Mara looked at him. "Yes." The smile vanished from his face, but he did not harden the way he had that first morning. He waited. That mattered. "He asked if I was okay," she said. Roman's jaw moved once. "And are you?" Mara studied him for a moment. "I think I am." Roman nodded. No jealousy, no order, no punishment carried out in silence. Just a man learning where not to put his hands around her life. By evening, Boston had cleared into a cold, bright dark. The penthouse windows held the city like a jewel box turned upside down. Mara stood by the glass in bare feet, one of Roman's shirts falling loose over sleep shorts she had bought that afternoon, because staying longer than one night had stopped being theoretical. Behind her, Roman moved through the kitchen with a phone pressed to his ear. "No," he said. "Kessler does not get a meeting because he is nervous now." He listened. "Let him be nervous." A pause. "Keep the clinic quiet. If Lena Ellis notices anything, I hear about it before you explain yourself." Mara turned. Roman ended the call and set the phone down. "You are very intense about subtlety for a man who moved my entire desk into your office. That was strategic. That was dramatic. It was both." She laughed before she could stop herself. The sound changed his face. It always did now. Roman looked at her as if laughter was still something he had not forgiven the world for giving anyone else first. Mara noticed. "You still hate that Ethan made me laugh." "Yes." "At least you are honest." "I am improving." She crossed the room and sat on the couch. Roman followed but did not sit until she pulled her legs up and made room for him. The television played an old black and white movie with the volume low. She doubted he was watching it. She was not either. He sat beside her close, but not crowding. For a while, they let the silence rest. Not the old silence from his office, not the kind that pressed on her chest and made her question her own place in the room. This silence had breath in it. A lamp glowed beside the couch. Rainwater still clung to the windows in thin lines. Somewhere below, a siren moved through the city and faded before it reached them. Mara looked at him openly. Roman felt it. What he asked. "You look tired." "I am not." That was not even a good lie. I did not intend it to be good, only brief. She shifted closer, tucking one leg beneath her. "You do that." "What?" "Answer like the truth is a locked room and you are deciding how much of the door to open." His eyes stayed on hers. "With you, the door is open more than I planned." The line settled between them. Mara's voice softened. "How long?" Roman looked away toward the dark window. "How long what?" "How long did you notice me before that morning?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then his gaze returned to her. "Long enough to know the sound of your steps outside my office." Her breath caught. "Roman, long enough to know when you were angry by the way you set files on your desk. Long enough to know you only wore your hair down when you were too tired to pin it properly. Long enough to know you took calls from your mother near the east window because the light was better there." Mara looked down. The tenderness hurt. "You learned me." "Yes. And let me think I was invisible." Roman's expression tightened. "Yes." She swallowed around the old ache. "I hated you for that some mornings." "I know." "No," she said, "you do not." He leaned forward slightly. "Then tell me." Mara looked at him. Really looked. At the controlled face, the tired eyes, the dangerous mouth that had spoken threats and tenderness with the same calm voice. "It felt like standing outside in the cold with a match in my hand," she said. "And every morning you walked by like you could not see the flame." Roman did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "I saw it." Mara's eyes stung. "That is worse." "Yes." No excuse. No defense. Just the truth. She breathed out slowly. "Why me?" Roman went still as if the question had been waiting in the room long before she asked it. He turned toward her fully. "Because you were the only quiet part of my day that never felt empty." The words were simple. They still reached too deep. Roman continued before she could speak. "Everyone wants something the moment they enter my life. Money, access, protection. A favor they call a partnership. A weakness they can dress as loyalty." His gaze moved over her face. "You wanted to do your job, pay your bills, call your mother and get home with enough dignity left to try again the next day." Mara's throat tightened. "You make that sound beautiful." It was. She shook her head a little. "It was survival." "I know." His hand lifted then stopped near her cheek. Still asking. Always asking now even without words. Mara leaned into his palm. Roman's breath changed. "I noticed because you were not trying to be noticed," he said. "And after a while, not looking at you became the hardest thing I did every day." The admission left the room silent. Mara moved before she could talk herself out of it. She climbed into his lap, knees on either side of him, her hands framing his face. Roman's hands went to her waist at once. Careful, possessive, trying to be better and still entirely himself. "You do not get to say things like that," she whispered, "and sit there like nothing happened." His mouth almost curved. "That feels unfair." "It is." His eyes warmed. "You are dangerous for a woman who used to sit quietly outside my door." "I was never quiet," she said. "You just did not know how to listen." Roman looked at her for a long second. "No," he said softly. "I knew how. I was afraid to answer." That was the last thing between them. Mara kissed him. Not like the office with anger and shock burning through restraint. Not like the first night in the penthouse with fear standing beside desire. This kiss was slower. Chosen. Full of everything they had both refused to say soon enough. Roman pulled her closer, one hand spreading across her back, the other sliding into her hair. His mouth moved over hers with a hunger that no longer felt like taking. It felt like coming home to something he had circled for too long in the dark. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "No more invisible," he murmured. Mara closed her eyes. "No, no more wondering if I see you. That one was your fault." "Yes." She opened her eyes. And now, Roman looked at her with a softness so bare it felt more dangerous than any threat he had made that day. Now I do not look away. Outside, Boston glittered against the black harbor. Somewhere in the city, the Kesslers were still breathing, still thinking, still deciding how expensive their mistake had become. The danger had not vanished. It had only learned her name. But inside the penthouse, with Roman's arms around her, and her own hands resting against the steady beat of his chest, Mara no longer felt like a woman waiting outside a closed door. She touched his face. "You saw me." Roman's hands tightened at her waist. "Yes," he said. His voice dropped rough with the weight of the promise. "I saw you, and I am done looking away."